So this came down yesterday. Very interesting. Probably a sign of the times, if you will. But the Green Bay Packers and our friends who are listening statewide in Wisconsin, on our fine affiliates out there, congratulations. You have a brand new defensive coordinator. His name is Jeff Hafley. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because he last coached Boston College to a win in the Fenway Bowl. And so he left his job as a head coach to be a defensive coordinator in Green Bay with the Packers. And according to some sources, the changing landscape of college football is a big part of the reason why, as the quote was said in the article that came out yesterday. You know, he wants to go someplace where he can coach football again and not have to deal with all the other things that come along with college football. So there we go.
I mean, that's the reality of the sport right now. And I know Nick Saban didn't outright say it. I do wonder if things were different, if there was more structure for name, image, and likeness, if he would have kept coaching. I really do wonder that.
I think so.
I lean that way too.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth or play that game, but I mean, that's how I feel about it. I just this sport's so great, and it's such an awesome product when you're in season. You forget about all of this, and then you get in the off season, and this is the unfortunate reality: is you're going to lose a lot of good coaches who just don't want to deal with any of this stuff anymore, and they get compensated as a position coach or as a coordinator at the NFL level, basically the same as they're getting compensated as a head coach in college. And that's just the reality.
You got to deal with a lot of different personalities. Like, it's one thing when a pro is making money because the structure is in place. It's already, you know, how that's handled has already been established. That infrastructure is in place. There is none in college football. And so you got to deal with all these rules, gray areas with rules. Am I breaking the rules? Am I not breaking the rules? Am I going to get this kid? I mean, is this kid going to stay? Is he making enough money? It's just, for all the things that coaches had to deal with before NIL, it's ramped up so much more. You now got guys that's like, you know, I don't really feel like working out that hard today. Like, think about that.
That's happening at the college level.
Oh.
Are you serious? I mean, think about it. Like, what the way it's structured right now, what's the punishment?
Yeah, I don't really feel
think
like
about it, Jonas. Anything they're
today.
being compensated is not pay for play. So, like, what are the coaches going to do other than suspend them or keep them out, whatever? I mean, it's a finable offense when you have a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement. You have a union. You have all these things that are negotiated because those are your working conditions. In this instance, technically any NIL opportunity and money that's paid out doesn't have anything to do or isn't supposed to have anything to do with pay for play. So you don't feel like working out. You don't feel like, okay. Now there might be a player conduct policy under the NIL, but it's not supposed to be the university or coaching staff that's dealing with that. It's the collective. So even then it becomes a gray area and it becomes a little bit hairy. The whole thing is crazy. It really is if you look into it.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah, the idea, and we talked about this, I think, last year when this whole boom started happening and NIL and all that stuff went down. But the idea that you have to re-recruit your own players to sell them on the program you already sold them on so they don't leave you for somebody else is wild to me. Like, it's like every year, not only do you have to focus on bringing in a new crop of talent and recruit them, you've got to resell your own guys, or else somebody's going to come in and offer them whatever they're going to offer them, and they're out. Like, I don't blame them. I always thought college coach, if I had a choice, if I ever had the opportunity to be an NFL or a college coach, I would always prefer being a college coach just because the atmosphere. You go to those, one of those college towns, it's awesome. You see stories like Kirk Ferentz at Iowa or anybody that's been in a place for a long time, and it's like, yeah, I understand why they stayed there and pushed back on the allure of going anywhere else, Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa, all that stuff. And now you're seeing, look, this is the third time a head coach has taken a coordinator job elsewhere. I mean, you had the two guys who went to Alabama, one from South Alabama, the other one, I forget which one, but like you were like that was your dream. You wanted to be a head coach, and you just said, man, F this. I'll just go be a coordinator and make probably more money to go do this as opposed to having to deal with the crap that comes along with it. It's just wild that that's where we're at now. And I just wonder where do we end up with all this? Is it only going to veer more?
Schools, the government's going to have to get involved, honestly. The schools are going to have to be allowed to handle what's going on with the athlete. And they're going to have to start sharing. They're going to have to start profit sharing with the participants of what, TV money is being paid for. You can't continue to expect the public, the fans, to be the one that funds NIL and funds these athletes. It's now turned into pretty much a pro model, and you got to model it like you're paying pros, like you're giving guys jobs. They're going to have to do it, and there's no way around that. There's no way around it.
So the next steps are this. There will most likely be a judgment in the state of California that will challenge the idea of student athletes being more than student athletes and becoming employees of the university. There's other legislation, or excuse me, not legislation. There's other lawsuits that are out there that are, in a variety of ways helping to shape this. So it's not necessarily the federal government first. I think the courts will initially help create some more shape to this in regards to the university's ability to identify student athletes as employees if they see fit. And then I think eventually the federal government, probably after the election cycle, the presidential election, will then step in and most likely create some sort of frameworks or guidelines so there is the foundation for a CBA, working conditions, a union, all those sorts of things. The biggest thing that stands in the way is Title IX. If you look at what's happening right now, what could happen with student athletes becoming employees, and I've said this all along and I've never gotten a good answer for it, is Title IX is law, right? That talks about the equality for men and women in regards to scholarship opportunities. So for every, male scholarship, there has to be a female scholarship. And what's interesting is if you pull away football, which is 85 full ride scholarships, you then would have to look at the other sports that are provided at that institution and say, well, does that mean that they don't have to uphold the other 85 for women's sports? How does that work? Like, how is Title IX impacted by the potential for football to pull away or break off and become, where these student athletes become employees of the university? So that's still one of the biggest hurdles, I think, that exists. I mean, even if you pulled away men's and women's basketball, since some people believe that they're revenue-generating sports, then what does it look like with football and men's and women's basketball pulled away? What happens to the rest of the Olympic sports and other sports at institutions? Do they become club sports? Is there any sort of funding altogether? There's a lot of questions that are yet to be answered. And I think there's some people who want to privatize it. They want to take all these college football teams and pull them together and create one big league, and they feel like they can find a private equity company to do it. All right. I mean, maybe that has some legs to it. I mean, look at the Live Golf Tour. They just threw a bunch of money at a bunch of professional golfers, and that seemed to be a way of creating their own tour. So, I obviously don't have the answers. I don't know that anyone does right now, and there's not an urgency to do so, only because when you look at the ratings, you see Ohio State, Michigan, or you see the semifinal and national championship games, everyone walks away and goes, well, we're healthy, right? The game's growing. It's becoming less regionalized, more nationalized. TV, viewing, the TV viewership's going up, and, all these leagues are making a ton of money. So no one's really feeling a sense of urgency to change it. But that day is rapidly approaching as I think the courts start to shape this whole thing in regards to student athletes now becoming employees, in particular football.